Lila Mercer stood on the front step of the Copper Ash Chapel in her blue wedding dress, when Silas Vane handed her a damp washhouse apron instead of a ring. The apron smelled of lye and coal smoke. One corner had been scorched brown where someone had left it too near a stove pipe. Silas held it out between two fingers while 6 mining wives watched from the chapel benches, and Reverend Brand kept one hand on the open marriage book. "Put that on," Silas said. "The wash is backed up clear to Monday." If Lila put it on, every woman in Copper Ash would know what she had become before supper. Not a bride, not a guest, a dead hand with no ticket home. Lila looked from the apron to his face. The man in his letter had written of a clean house, a lawful wedding, and a quiet life after too many years of camp dirt. The man in front of her wore a storekeeper's vest, a silver watch, and a smile that did not touch his eyes. "I came here to marry you," she said. Silas laughed once, short and public. "You came late." The word struck the chapel harder than it should have. Lila had arrived on the noon freight wagon, exactly when his last letter told her to arrive. She was 27 years old enough to know a trap when a man started it in front of witnesses, but knowing did not put fair money back in her purse. Her trunk sat beside the chapel door. Her return ticket was inside it. So were the letters Silas had sent east, tied with a black ribbon. Reverend Brand lowered his eyes to the marriage page. "Late?" Lila asked. "The mine laundry lost 2 women this week," Silas said. "I paid your passage. Copper Ash needs hands more than I need a wife who cannot read a date." A woman in the second pew pressed her lips together and looked at the floor. Another pulled her shawl tighter. No one spoke. One mining wife looked at the apron, then at Lila's empty hands, and quickly looked away. Lila felt the room measuring her. A bride with no husband, no fare, and no witness could become camp labor before sundown if the right man said she owed him. Silas knew it. Brand knew it. The women knew it too, and their silence told her they had already seen this kind of debt fasten itself around someone else's throat. "Your letter says noon, June 3rd, Lila said. Silas's eyes sharpened. "My letter says what I say it says." He pushed the apron against her bodice. Lila did not take it. "Silas," Reverend Brand said softly. Hope moved through Lila so quickly it hurt. Then Brand shut the marriage book. "Perhaps Miss Mercer should rest first," he said. Silas looked pleased. "She can rest after sheets are boiled." The chapel door opened behind Lila, and heat came in from the mining road. Boots sounded on the step. Lila turned enough to see a tall man with a dark hat in his hand and a burned scar running from the left side of his jaw down under his collar. His right hand was bare. His left wore a riding glove even in June. "Vane," the stranger said, "you invited half the camp to a wedding. I came to collect ore bills after the ceremony. I did not come to watch you sell a bride into soap water." Silas's smile thinned. "Nash Rowden, this is family business. She is a late bride with a debt on her back. Do not dress her up as a lady because she has blue cloth on." "No," the man said. "It is public business now. You made it public when you handed her that apron in a church." Lila's fingers tightened on the seam of her coat. Nash Rowden was known even in the train towns east of Copper Ash. Ash Mesa Ranch hauled ore over the ridge when mine wagons could not climb the rock cut. People said Rowden had pulled 2 men out of a storage fire and never took his left glove off afterward. Silas turned toward him. "Do not meddle in a marriage bargain." "I do not see a marriage." Nash looked at the closed book. "I see a woman being threatened." Reverend Brand's face colored, but he said nothing. Silas lifted Lila's trunk by one handle. "Her passage came out of my account. Until that is paid, she stays where I put her." Lila stepped toward the trunk. Silas pulled it back. "That trunk is mine," she said. "Not until your debt is cleared." Nash moved so fast the room seemed to draw one breath. He did not grab Silas. He placed himself between Silas and Lila, close enough that Silas had to look up. "Set it down." Or what? Or every ore team at Ash Mesa stops hauling your mine load before sunset. My men will eat beans for a week before they help you trap her. Silas glanced toward the women in the pews. He wanted them afraid. Nash had given them something else to watch. Lila saw the cost land. Ore hauling was not charity. Ash Mesa made winter money from copper ash loads. Nash had risked it in one sentence for a woman whose name he had not known 5 minutes before. Silas let the trunk drop hard against the step. You will regret that. Most likely, Nash said. Then he turned to Lila and his voice changed. It did not soften into pity, it steadied. Miss Mercer, I have mending work at Ash Mesa. Paid by the week. Mrs. Dobbs keeps the ranch house. You would have the small room off the saddle shop with its own bar on the inside. I can put enough coin in your hand for return fare now, before you decide anything. Silas scoffed. Listen to him dress up theft. Nash did not look away from Lila. You owe me nothing if you refuse. You owe me nothing if you accept and leave tomorrow. But you do not owe him labor because he is ashamed to marry the woman he ordered. That was the first clean sentence anyone had spoken since Lila reached the chapel. She did not trust it simply because she wanted to. Wanting was dangerous. But Nash took 3 coins from his vest pocket, crossed to the chapel rail, and set them there where every witness could see. Fair money, he said, hers, whether she comes to Ash Mesa or not. Mrs. Kerr, the woman in the second pew, made a small sound. It was not quite approval. It was surprise and maybe grief. Lila picked up the coins. Her hand shook once. She closed her fist before Silas could see it. I will take the work, she said, for 1 week. Silas's face hardened. You step off this porch with him and you do not get that trunk. Lila looked down at the trunk, then at the apron hanging from his hand. Keep it for now, she said. A man who has to lock up a woman's clothes to hold her has already admitted what he is. The mining wives looked up then. One of them breathed out as if she had been holding the air since Silas spoke. Nash opened the chapel door and stood aside. He did not touch Lila's back. He did not hurry her. He waited until she walked out under her own power with Silas's apron still lying on the chapel floor behind her. Ash Mesa sat above copper ash on a shelf of yellow grass and black stone. The ranch house was not grand. Its porch leaned at one corner and the barn doors had been patched with mismatched pine. But every gate had a working hinge, and every man in the yard looked at Nash before he looked at her. This is Miss Mercer, he told the 2 hands by the pump. She is here for paid mending. She keeps her fare. She keeps her door bar. Anyone who speaks of her as Vane's property packs his bedroll before supper. One hand, a wiry man with gray in his beard, spat into the dust. Silas will cut the betting account. Then we sleep rough, Nash said. The man nodded, as if that was answer enough. Lila stood very still. Public terms mattered. They were not tenderness, but they were a fence around danger. Mrs. Dobbs came from the house wiping her hands on a towel. She was broad-shouldered, sun-brown, and not smiling. You can sew, she asked. I can mend canvas, shirts, wagon covers, gloves, and torn hems, Lila said. I kept boarders' linen for 6 years after my mother died. Can you eat before proving it? Lila almost laughed. It came out thin. Yes, ma'am. Good, I dislike hungry saints. Nash's mouth moved as if he wanted to smile, but had forgotten the habit. Lila noticed and looked away before he could catch her noticing. The room off the saddle shop was small and clean. It held a cot, a washstand, and one narrow window that looked toward the Mesa Trail. The inside bar was heavy and new. Nash showed it from the doorway and did not cross the threshold until she stepped back and invited him to point out the lamp. Mrs. Dobbs sleeps across the breezeway, he said. I bunk in the office when strangers are here. This is your ranch. It is also your door for as long as you are behind it. She set the fair coins on the washstand, then changed her mind and put them into the inner pocket of her travel coat. Nash saw the movement and nodded once. Good, he said. That one word steadied her more than a speech. Before Mrs. Dobbs could set bread on the table, a boy from Copper Ash rode up with no hat and Vane's words in his mouth. Mr. Vane says any ranch that feeds her feeds his debt, the boy called from the gate. The yard went still. Nash stepped onto the porch. Tell Mr. Vane Ash Mesa feeds paid workers. He says she is not a worker, she is his late bride. Lila felt the label land, where the apron had touched her dress. Nash did not look at her as if she needed saving from the words. He looked at the boy. Then tell him he can come say that where grown men and women hear him. The boy wheeled his mule and rode back down the trail. At supper, Mrs. Dobbs placed Lila near the kitchen end of the table, not at Nash's right hand, and not at the far bench where hired strangers sat. The men talked around her at first. Then Nash asked her where she had learned to mend burned canvas. Silence dropped. Lila looked at his gloved hand. At the boarding house, a laundry stove caught 2 years ago. We saved the sheets, not the shed. You were hurt. Only a little. You went back in. My mother's thimble box was in there. She regretted saying it as soon as she heard the softness in her own voice. Nash's gaze lowered to his glove. Sometimes a person goes back in for what looks foolish to everyone outside the fire. No one at the table spoke. Lila heard a fork set down. His burn was not a camp tale to them. It was a door they did not open. She did not ask him who he had gone back for. After supper, he brought a stack of torn ore tarps to the saddle shop and left them on the bench outside her room. Work for morning, he said. You said 1 week. I did. If Silas brings men. Nash looked toward the dark ridge. Then he finds me awake. That sounds like ownership if a woman hears it too quickly. He turned back at once. Then hear it slower. I will guard my ranch. I will answer for the terms I spoke in church. I will not tell you where to stand. The answer was careful enough to hurt. Lila wished she had met him in an ordinary place, with no apron on a chapel floor and no trunk in another man's keeping. Thank you, she said. Do not thank me yet. I may have cost you your trunk. No, she said. Silas did that. Nash nodded, and for the first time his eyes warmed enough to change his face. The next morning, Copper Ash answered. An ore driver rode up before breakfast and stopped at the yard gate. His mule was sweating hard from the climb. Mr. Rowden, he called. Vane says no Ash Mesa teams at the mine yard unless the Mercer woman is returned by noon. Mrs. Dobbs, carrying a milk pail, froze by the pump. 2 hands stepped out of the barn. Lila came from the saddle shop with a canvas needle still threaded in her hand. Nash walked across the yard slowly, returned. The driver swallowed his word. Use yours. He says she is under passage debt. Do you say it? The driver looked at Lila. Shame crossed his face fast, then vanished under fear. I say I have 4 children and a team note. Nash took that without anger. Then tell Vane Ash Mesa does not return people. He will hire Mason Ridge. Then Mason Ridge can haul his ore. The driver stared. That is half your cash till winter. I can count. Lila felt the yard shift around her. Men respected risk when it was far away. They feared it when it walked into their breakfast. Nash had not only given up a contract, he had asked his hands to live under the loss with him. The gray-bearded hand from the pump stepped forward. Beans, then. The younger hand cursed under his breath, but he did not leave. Nash looked at Lila only after the driver rode down the trail. You still have your fare, he said. I know. Use it if this becomes too heavy. She wanted to tell him that nobody had ever made escape sound like respect before. Instead, she lifted the torn canvas. This seam will tear again if I use cotton thread. Do you have waxed linen? The gray-bearded hand snorted. She talks like Mrs. Dobbs. Mrs. Dobbs set down the milk pail. then she is likely right. The work saved Lila from thinking too much. She mended ore tarps, then gloves, then a split leather bucket used for sand near the forge. Nash came and went, never lingering long enough for the men to make a joke, never staying away so long that she forgot his risk. Near noon, Mrs. Kerr came up the Mesa Road with a bundle under one arm. She was the woman who had looked at the floor in the chapel. In daylight, Lila saw the purple shadows under her eyes and the raw patches on her hands from lie. "I should not be here," Mrs. Kerr said before anyone greeted her. Lila set down her needle. "Then come into the shade before the road reports you." The woman gave a quick, frightened laugh. "You speak plain. I have been spoken around all week." Mrs. Kerr looked toward Nash, who stood by the pump. "Mr. Rowden, my husband works the third tunnel. If Vane knows I brought washout, he will cut our room credit." Nash did not answer for Lila. He waited. Lila understood the waiting and felt the weight of it. If she took the bundle, the danger spread. If she refused it, Mrs. Kerr walked back into the same wash house that had been waiting for Lila. "What is in it?" Lila asked. "Burned shirts, canvas cuffs, 2 children's coats. Vane charges full replacement if we cannot mend what the mine tears." "I can mend them," Lila said. Mrs. Kerr's eyes filled so suddenly, she turned her face away. Nash stepped back from the pump. "Ash Mesa takes paid work. Mrs. Dobbs records it. No debt favors. I have no coin until Saturday." "Then Saturday," Lila said. Mrs. Kerr looked at her, as if she had opened a window in a wall. That afternoon, Lila sat in the mending room with Mrs. Kerr across from her, and Nash just outside under the eave, repairing a harness buckle he did not need to repair there. He kept his gloved hand turned away from the sun. Mrs. Kerr saw it. "Does it pain you still?" Nash's jaw tightened. Lila answered before the question could become a cruelty. "Burns do when weather changes." Nash looked at her through the open door. "Yours." She held up her right hand. A pale mark crossed the base of her thumb. "Mine was small." "Pain does not measure by size alone," he said. Mrs. Kerr lowered her eyes and bent over the coat. The room went quiet but not empty. Lila felt Nash's attention on her hand, not hungry, not pitying, careful, as if he had found a scar and refused to make it smaller just because it was not his. When Mrs. Kerr left, she carried 3 mended shirts and 1 message. "Vane locked your trunk behind the wash house," she said at the yard gate. "He set it where every woman has to pass it. He shows it to them and says that is what happens to a bride who forgets who paid." Lila's fingers closed around the gate rail. Nash's voice stayed level. "Did he open it?" "Not yet." "He will," Lila said. Mrs. Kerr nodded. "He says if you come by dusk, you may earn it back." The safe room behind Lila, the fare in her pocket, the paid work on the bench, all of it seemed to draw one step away. Sila's still had her trunk. More than clothes lay inside. Her mother's thimble, the letters, her proof that she had not come late, though the letters were not enough to win anything by themselves. Nash came to the gate, but stopped an arm's length away. "I can send 2 men. He will hide it before they reach the yard." "I can go." "He wants you to. Then he says you attacked him over a woman who owes him debt." Nash's face hardened because she was right. "Then what do you want to do?" he asked. No man had asked her that all week. Not what she should do, not what she had better do, what she wanted. Lila looked down the Mesa Road toward Copper Ash. "I want my trunk. I want Mrs. Kerr not to be punished for speaking. I want Reverend Brand to open his mouth in the building where he closed it. That is more than one want. I have been saving them." For a moment the old humor touched him, then it faded. "Brand will not stand against Vane." "Why?" Nash looked toward the chapel roof, just visible below as a pale shape in the smoke haze. "Because Vane bought those shingles after the winter storm. Men call it charity when money buys their silence." The words settled into place. Brand had not been weak in a general way. He had been purchased in a specific one. That made his silence uglier and easier to name. Lila spent the next morning at the mending bench, but her mind stayed in Copper Ash. More bundles came by back ways. A miner's daughter brought socks in a flour sack. An old Mexican teamster brought a torn canvas feed hood and said nothing except for Saturday. Each bundle was a small rebellion, and each one made Sila's more dangerous. By afternoon, Nash's younger hand, Tom, threw down a currycomb and said what the others had not. "We lose the mine haul, we lose winter oats." Mrs. Dobbs turned from the stove. "Then speak to Mr. Rowden." "I am speaking where he can hear." Tom faced Nash. "I did not hire on to starve over a bride who belongs to Vane." Nash stood from the bench. Lila rose too. "I do not belong to Vane." Tom flushed. "I mean no offense." "Then use no offensive words." The gray-bearded hand gave a low whistle. Tom looked from Lila to Nash, then back again. "Fine, over a woman Vane says owes him." "Better," Lila said, though her heart was beating hard. Nash did not smile. "Tom, you can ride before sundown with a week's pay, no shame." Tom's anger wavered. "You would pay me to leave." "I would rather pay you than own your fear." That sentence moved through the room. Lila felt it strike her own fear too. Tom looked down. "My mother takes flour from Vane's store." "Then we find flour elsewhere," Mrs. Dobbs said. "With what?" Lila glanced at the bundles stacked in the corner. "With mending money." All eyes turned. "Mrs. Kerr cannot pay until Saturday," Tom said. "Others can." Lila touched the top bundle. "If Ash Mesa records the work and takes payment fare, not debt, the camp learns there is another place to bring what Vane holds over them. Not charity, work." Nash watched her. "That makes you his rival." "No," she said, "it makes me his answer." The words left her before she knew she believed them. Nash's expression changed. For one breath, the scar and the glove and the hard control fell away, and she saw a man looking at a woman he wanted close and feared he had no right to ask. "Lila," he said, then stopped because every hand in the room was listening. Her name in his voice warmed her more than it should have. Mrs. Dobbs saved them both by slamming a spoon into a pot. "If this is becoming a business meeting, someone fetch the account slate." Lila did not miss the way Nash looked at the slate and then away from it. He knew the danger of making the ending another object in a woman's hand. He had given her fare, not a token. Choice, not a badge. That evening, Lila went to Reverend Brand. She did not let Nash walk beside her. He rode behind at a distance with Tom, close enough to protect, far enough that Copper Ash could not say she had been carried in under a man's order. Brand found her in the chapel aisle and looked at the floor before she spoke. "Miss Mercer, this is not a good hour." "It was not a good hour when you closed the marriage book." He flinched. The chapel smelled of pine shingles and dust. New roof boards showed above the rafters, clean and pale against smoke-dark beams. Lila looked at them until Brand understood that she knew. "Sila's helped this church," he said. "Sila's bought a quiet preacher." His mouth tightened. "You should be careful." "I was careful. I answered letters. I traveled by lawful stage. I stood where I was told to stand. Careful did not save me." Brand gripped the back of a pew. "I thought if I pressed him in public, he would make it worse for you." "He made it worse because you did not press him." Outside, wagon wheels passed. Lila heard men's voices from the mine road. The world kept moving around the building where her life had been turned without her consent. Brand lowered himself onto the pew. "The roof fund was empty," he said. "Winter split the boards. Women were bringing children under leaks. Vane paid for shingles. And in return, he asked only that I not shame him over camp matters. A bride is not a camp matter." Brand covered his face with one hand. Pity tugged at her. She refused to let it drive. Pity before cost was how men like Silas stayed comfortable. "Tomorrow," Lila said, "you will tell the women who were here that I did not arrive late." He looked up. "I cannot prove that." "You can prove you did not read the letter. You can prove Silas never showed you a late date. You can prove you shut the book while he took my trunk. If I stand against him, he will call the roof debt. Then let the rain come through honest boards." Brand stared at her. "And if I am afraid?" he asked. "Then say that too. Say she was not late. Say I was afraid. Say it in the open where you were silent." She left him there with the new shingles above his head. Nash waited outside by the hitch rail, hat in hand. He did not ask what Brand had said. He studied her face and seemed to know the answer was not easy. "You should not have had to do that alone," he said. "I did have to do it alone. That was the point." He accepted the correction, and now. Lila looked toward the wash house beyond the chapel. Lantern light showed through the plank gaps. She could see her trunk under the lean-to roof, tied shut with rope that was not hers. "Now I decide whether I can leave it there tonight." Nash followed her gaze. "Can you?" The trunk held her past. Her mother's thimble, her letters, her spare dress, the small things that proved she had been someone before Silas tried to rename her as debt. But the women in the wash house had more than memory at stake. "Yes," she said, and it cost her enough that her voice went quiet. Nash put his hat back on. "Then Ash Mesa waits with you." The next day, Silas stopped waiting. By mid-morning, every bundle that had been brought to Ash Mesa was stacked on Lila's bench. Mrs. Care arrived last, breathless, with a cut on her palm and fear in her face. "He barred the wash-house yard," she said. "Says no woman takes work out. Says no miner gets clean bedding unless his wife signs the camp account back to him." Lila reached for a cloth. "Your hand." The gate splintered. I pulled against it. Nash came in from the yard. "Is anyone locked inside?" "Not inside the building. In the yard. He put the trunk by the gate so all can see it." Mrs. Care's voice shook with anger now, not only fear. "He says if Miss Mercer comes and puts on the apron, he will let the rest of us take our bundles." The room changed. Tom swore. Mrs. Dobbs took the kettle off the stove. Nash's gloved hand closed once and opened. Lila wrapped Mrs. Care's palm. The cloth went red in one spot, but not badly. "The stovepipe?" Lila asked. Mrs. Care blinked. "What?" "Yesterday it was sparking." "Still is, we told him." Lila tied the cloth. "Then the yard is not safe." Nash stepped closer. "Lila." She heard everything in her name. Warning, fear, something more dangerous than both. "If I take the coach fare now," she said, "Silas keeps the women. If you go down there, he may keep you. Then come as witness, not rescuer." That hurt him, she saw it, but he nodded. "As witness," he said, "until witness is not enough." They rode down together, Lila in Mrs. Dobbs's wagon with the mending bundles, Nash and his two hands behind. He did not put her on his horse. He did not make a show. The choice had to be seen as hers, or Silas would turn even rescue into theft. Copper ash had gathered before they reached the chapel. Miners stood near the assay shed. Women clustered at the wash-house fence. Reverend Brand waited by the chapel door, pale and bareheaded under the harsh sun. Silas stood inside the wash-house yard with Lila's trunk at his feet, and the blue apron draped over it like a flag. "There she is," he called. "Ash Mesa's charity bride." One miner laughed because other men had taught him to laugh at cruelty before deciding if it was funny. His wife turned and stared at him until the sound died in his throat. Lila climbed down before Nash could step from his horse. Dust rose around her hem. "Open the gate," she said. Silas smiled, put on the apron. Behind him, the wash-house stove pipe spat sparks from a seam near the wall. A woman coughed. Another held a basket of wet sheets against her chest. "Open the gate," Lila repeated. "The pipe is throwing." That pipe has thrown for 10 years. And one day it will catch. Then work faster. Mrs. Kerr gripped the fence from the inside. Silas, let us out. Silas did not look at her. No one leaves with my accounts unsettled. Lila turned to the miners. You hear him. A few men shifted. One stared at his boots. Silas laughed. They hear a woman trying to steal camp labor. No, Lila said. They hear a man say people are accounts. Nash dismounted behind her. Silas pointed at him. And there stands the thief. Rowden wants my wash, my ore bedding, my women, and now my bride debt. Nash's voice carried without rising. I want you to open a gate before that stove catches. Silas grabbed Lila's trunk handle. She steps inside or this goes in the boiler. The threat struck like a slap. Lila saw the black ribbon around her letters in her mind. Her mother's thimble, the spare dress she had stitched by lamplight before leaving Missouri. For one terrible second, she moved toward the gate because memory pulled harder than sense. Then Mrs. Kerr cried out. A spark had caught in a wad of lint under the pipe. It flared blue-white, then orange. Everything happened at once. Women backed toward the gate. The latch held. Silas looked at the flame, then at Lila, and for the first time his face showed panic. Unlock it, Mrs. Kerr shouted. Silas fumbled at his belt. Lila saw the key ring. She saw his hand shake. She saw Nash start forward. Witness, she snapped. Nash stopped as if the word had tied him. Lila ran to the side of the gate where the latch bar rested in an outside notch. It was not meant to hold against a full push from within and a lift from without. Silas had trusted fear more than iron. She wrapped both hands around the bar, heat pressed from the yard. A woman inside shoved. The bar jumped but did not clear. Nash took one step. No, Lila said through her teeth, not yet. She put her boot against the post, lifted with both hands, and felt the splintered edge slice her palm. The bar rose. Mrs. Kerr shoved again. The gate burst open. Women spilled out with baskets, sheets, and smoke chasing them. Nash moved then not to seize Silas but to the water barrel. He plunged both hands into it, glove and all, and grabbed the burning lint with a wet feed sack. His jaw went white. The old burns under his glove must have screamed. He did not stop. Tom and the gray-bearded hand formed a line to the pump. Miners stared until Lila turned on them. Are you waiting for him to sell you permission to breathe? That broke them. Two men ran for buckets. Another pulled the stove away from the wall. Women beat sparks from the sheets with wet cloth. Silas dragged Lila's trunk toward the chapel steps. This is hers when she pays, he shouted. Every woman here owes my yard. Every man here wants clean bedding by Monday. You think Ash Mesa will do it for free? No, Lila said, turning from the smoke. I will do it for fair pay. So will any woman who chooses. You do not own the wash because you own the gate. You owe passage. You invited me as a wife. I invited you as I pleased. The sentence rang across the yard. That was the proof, not paper, not a hidden letter, not a clever mark on a page. Silas had said in front of everyone that the promise meant only what pleased him. Reverend Brand stepped down from the chapel. Silas pointed at him. Tell them she came late. Brand's mouth opened. No sound came. Lila held her bleeding hand at her side and waited. If he failed now, the cost would be his, not hers. Brand looked at the women. He looked at the roof above him. Then he looked at Lila. She was not late, Brand said. I never saw a late date. I saw a frightened woman and a powerful man, and I closed the book because I was afraid of losing his money. Silas went still. Brand's voice shook, but it carried. Mr. Vane told me not to shame him in front of the camp. I obeyed because his money roofed this chapel. The yard fell silent except for the pump. Reverend, Silas warned. Brand turned toward him. No, I made a church into your office. That ends today. Mrs. Kerr stepped through the open gate with smoke on her sleeves. My bedding leaves your wash-house, Silas. Her husband, a broad miner with coal dust in his beard, moved to her side. He looked ashamed enough to choke on it, but he acted. He picked up their laundry basket and carried it across the yard to Lila's wagon. A miner who had laughed at the chapel took one step back from Silas. It was a small step, but everyone saw it. Another woman followed, then another. Silas shouted at the miners, "Any man who moves those sheets loses store credit." The gray-bearded Ash Mesa hand laughed once. "Credit at your store is a rope with sugar on it." For a second, nobody wanted to be the first man to lose bread over a woman's wash basket. Then the ore driver from the day before walked into the yard. He did not speak. He lifted one bundle, carried it to Lila's wagon, and set it down. More miners moved after him. Silas lunged for the trunk. "This stays." Lila reached it first. Her palm burned where the splinter had cut her, but she set that hand flat on the lid. "No. You cannot stop me. I already did." He raised his hand as if to shove her away. Nash was there before the motion finished. He did not strike Silas. He caught the man's wrist with his bare right hand and held it where every person could see the choice Silas had nearly made. "Do not," Nash said. Silas tried to pull free. "You will lose every mine dollar you have." Nash's left hand hung at his side, wet glove smoking faintly from the heat it had taken. His face was tight with pain. "I believe I already chose that." Tom stepped forward. "Ash Mesa team stays with Rowden." The gray-bearded hand joined him. "So does mine." At the wagon, the ore driver from the day before removed his hat slowly. "My team can haul for Ash Mesa direct," he said, "if Mrs. Mercer keeps accounts fair." Silas stared at him, as if betrayal had learned his name. "You all need me," Silas said. Mrs. Kerr lifted the burned apron from Lila's trunk. She did not throw it. She laid it on the wash-house threshold where smoke still curled from the lint pile. "We needed clean work," she said, "not you." One of the women pulled the apron flat with 2 fingers, as if it were something dirty. No one looked at Lila as a burden now. They looked at Silas as the danger. That was the moment Silas lost Copper Ash. Not in a court, not under a badge. He lost it in the hands of women carrying their own bundles, men lifting bedding away from his yard, and a preacher standing under bought shingles admitting the price. Brand took the chapel offering box from beside the door and placed it on the ground. "The roof fund will be open to the congregation," he said. "Mrs. Kerr, Mrs. Alvarez, Mrs. Dobbs if she will serve, and any 2 miners the camp chooses will count it. Mr. Vane's name comes off the board." "You cannot do that," Silas said. Brand looked older than he had that morning. "I should have done it before a woman bled on my steps." Silas backed toward the wash-house. No one followed him. That was worse. His orders found no hands to carry them. His credit found no fear to wear. His trunk claim sat under Lila's palm and went nowhere. By nightfall, 3 mine families would move their accounts from Vane's store. By Monday, 2 ore teams would refuse his yard unless payment was counted in cash, not debt. Nash released his wrist. "Pick up your apron," Nash said. Silas looked at the apron on the threshold, then at the watching camp. He did not pick it up. He walked past it into the wash-house as if a door could hide what everyone had seen. Mrs. Kerr, husband, lifted Lila's trunk into the Ash Mesa wagon. "Ma'am," he said, and the word held respect now, not pity. Lila's knees wanted to bend. She made them hold until the trunk was safe. Then she turned to Nash. His left glove was ruined. Steam rose from it. He kept his hand closed, but pain had drawn sweat along his temple. "You said witness," he said before she could scold him. "I also said not yet." "It became yet." She took one step closer. "You risked your hand." "I risked it before for men who ran back into smoke for ore tickets. This was better." She wanted to touch him. The want was fierce enough to frighten her. Instead, she took the wet sack from his hand and passed it to Mrs. Dobbs, who had arrived in the second wagon with the practical fury of a woman who hated being late to trouble. "He needs cool water," Lila said. Mrs. Dobbs looked at Nash's glove, then at Lila's bleeding palm. "So do you." Nash saw the blood then. His face changed more sharply than it had for his own pain. "Lila." "Gate splinter," she said, "small. Pain does not measure by size alone." He gave her back her own sentence and made it gentler. The camp kept moving around them. Bundles went into wagons. Women chose names for a new wash account. Brand stood with Mrs. Care and listened while she told him exactly how the chapel fund would be counted. Silas stayed inside the wash house and shouted once, but no one answered, so he stopped. By sundown, Lila's trunk sat in her room at Ash Mesa. She opened it alone. Nash waited outside the saddle shop where she could see his shadow through the narrow window, but he did not come in. Her letters were there, her spare dress, her mother's thimble box. Silas had not opened it, or if he had not understood what any of it was worth. She untied the black ribbon and read the last letter once. Noon, June 3rd, in Silas's slanted hand. Then she folded it away. The letter had not saved her. It only proved the lie after the truth had already walked into daylight. She washed her palm, wrapped it, and stepped outside. Nash sat on the bench by the saddle shop with his left hand in a basin. The ruined glove lay beside him. Without it, the scars on his hand were plain. The skin pulled tight across the knuckles, pale in some places and red in others. He did not hide it when she came out. "Does it hurt badly?" she asked. "Yes." The honesty moved her. "Was it your brother?" she asked quietly. Nash looked toward the dark mesa. For a moment she thought she had asked too much. "My sister," he said. "Mara, storage fire behind this shop. I got 2 hands out first because they were closest. Went back for her. The roof beam came down before I reached the stall door." Lila sat on the far end of the bench, leaving space, because space had become part of their language. "I am sorry. People said I did all I could." "Did that help?" "No." She nodded. "People told me I was lucky Silas sent fair. They said a woman should be grateful for a man with a store account." "Did that help?" "No." He looked at her then, and something passed between them that was stronger than comfort. It was recognition. "I wanted to ask you something in the mending room," he said. Everyone was listening. Everyone is always listening in a mining camp. Then ask where the mesa can hear, and the camp cannot. He glanced at the open yard. Mrs. Dobbs was pretending not to watch from the kitchen door. Tom was pretending worse from the barn. Nash's mouth curved. "Miss Mercer, when your week of paid work is done, may I ask to call on you properly?" The question left her room to leave. It left her room to say no. It did not pretend the day's danger had turned into romance simply because he wanted it to. Lila looked down at her bandaged palm, then at the fair coins still in her pocket. "You may ask," she said, "after my week is done." His smile came slowly. "That is fair." "And if I say no?" "Then I will pay for the mending and miss you in silence." She believed him, which made her answer catch in her throat. "You may not need silence," she said, "but I need the week." "Then you have it." The week did not turn Copper Ash gentle. Silas tried twice to reclaim accounts. First, Mrs. Care and Mrs. Alvarez brought 6 women to the chapel steps and read the new wash prices aloud. Fair pay. No debt carry without signature. No locked gate. No trunk held for any account. Then Silas sent a boy to Ash Mesa, with a note saying Lila still owed passage. Lila burned the note in the stove after Mrs. Dobbs read it as witness. She did not burn the letters. Those she kept because they reminded her that paper could support truth but could not stand up and live it for her. Brand preached one sermon about cowardice and did not name himself gently. Afterward, He took down Silas's brass donor plate from the chapel wall. He did it in front of the congregation with his own hands and gave the plate to Mrs. Care to melt for roof nails if she pleased. Mrs. Care said she would rather sell it for lye. That made even Bran laugh, though his eyes were wet. Lila watched from the back. She had not yet taken a pew. The chapel was still the place where she had been handed the apron. Some doors became safe only after behavior changed. Nash did not enter that Sunday. He stood outside under the cottonwood, hat in hand, as if the threshold still had teeth. Lila saw him there and understood. Grief made some buildings larger than they were. At the end of the week, the new wash account paid in coins, flour, and 2 sacks of beans. Tom counted the beans 3 times and declared romance less foolish than expected if it fed men. Mrs. Dobbs told him romance had nothing to do with beans, and everything to do with whether a man washed his own cup. Nash washed his cup in silence. Lila laughed before she could stop herself. The sound surprised the room. It surprised her more. Nash looked at her as if he had no right to stare and could not look away. That evening, Lila counted her wages at the saddle shop bench. She had more than return fare now. Not enough for a grand future, but enough for a choice that was not pretend. Nash waited by the doorway until she looked up. "The week is done," he said. "It is. May I ask now?" Lila closed her fingers over the coins. "Yes." He stepped inside only as far as the threshold. "May I call on you Saturday, with Mrs. Dobbs in the front room and no preacher, storekeeper, or mining camp deciding what either of us owes?" "That is a crowded sentence. I wanted the terms clear. I like clear terms. And after Saturday, if you still wish to leave, I will take you to the stage myself. And if I wish to stay..." He swallowed. "Then I will be grateful and try not to look too much like it." "Saturday then," she said. The next Sunday, Lila went back to the Copper Ash Chapel. She did not wear the blue wedding dress. She wore a plain brown skirt, a clean white collar, and the travel coat with the fair coins still in the inner pocket. Her trunk stayed at Ash Mesa because she chose to leave it there. Nash drove the wagon, but he did not help her down until she offered her hand. His left hand was wrapped clean. His right hand closed around hers for one short moment, warm and steady, then let go. The chapel yard quieted when she stepped through the gate. Silas was not there. His wash house stood open, empty lines moving in the wind. 2 miners had taken work with the new ore team. 3 women had brought bundles to Ash Mesa that morning. Control did not always break with a crash. Sometimes it broke because people stopped walking toward the door that had hurt them. Reverend Brand stood on the chapel step. "Miss Mercer," he said, and his voice carried. "Before you enter, I owe you the words I withheld. You came here on the day you were told. You were wronged in this doorway. I helped that wrong by fearing a donor more than the truth." Lila felt every eye on her. The old shame rose by habit, looking for somewhere to live. It found no room. "Thank you for saying it in the open," she said. Brand stepped aside. The chapel door stood wide. For a moment, Lila saw the apron again. She saw Silas's hand, the closed book, the women looking down. Then Mrs. Care moved from the second pew and sat on the left side, leaving room beside her. Mrs. Alvarez did the same. Tom and the gray-bearded hand stood in the back, awkward in washed shirts. Nash remained outside. Lila turned. "Mr. Rowden." He looked up. "Are you coming in?" His face changed. The question had reached something older than a Sunday service. "If you want me there," he said. "I asked." He took off his hat and crossed the threshold. No roof beam fell. No smoke rose. No one whispered about scars. Nash walked down the aisle with his gloved hand at his side and sat beside Lila in the pew she chose, not the front, not the back, but where the morning light reached the floor. Lila felt the fair coins in her pocket when she sat. They were still hers. That was why staying meant something. Brand opened the service, but Lila did not hear the first words clearly. She heard Nash breathing beside her. She heard Mrs. Care's children whisper and then hush. She heard the chapel boards creak under people who had watched her shame and now had to watch her dignity. After the service, Nash walked with her to the yard. He did not offer his arm until they reached the step. She took it there, in the same place where Silas had held out the apron. No apron waited on that step now. Her trunk was safe at Ash Mesa. Her fare was still hers. Mrs. Dobbs was waiting by the wagon with a face that dared anyone to comment. Nash looked at Lila. Saturday went well enough that I would like to ask for the next one. You ask one Saturday at a time. Until you tell me to stop. Lila looked past him at the open washhouse lines, the chapel door, the road down to the stage yard and the Mesa Road climbing home. Every way out remained real. That made the way she wanted clearer. Ask for the next one, she said. Nash's hand covered hers lightly on his sleeve, not holding her there, only answering. Lila stepped down from the place where they had tried to hand her away. She turned toward the Ash Mesa wagon with Nash beside her instead of in front of her, while the chapel bell rang over copper ash for a woman no one could claim again.